If you want to drive more e-commerce revenue without increasing your ad spend, and you want the revenue today, not in a year, it's email and CRO. That's how you do it. Reconvert customers from long ago and turn existing site traffic into revenue. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have. So if you want help with this, come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak to me directly.
In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
How to build an audience in 2026. It is still true. 10 times more of your repeat buyers every month are receiving email than are not. When people stop receiving emails, they stop purchasing. When someone leaves your list, like what's happening? Either they opt out or they tune out. In campaigns, if someone hasn't opened in 3-4 months, Gmail and Yahoo are just going to start dumping stuff in spam. They want to see engagement. This is normal email marketer stuff that nobody does. If you do it, you're going to build an audience in 2026. It's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilot House email and customer retention team. If you want to make the sweet nectar of low-cost revenue a large part of your digital ecosystem, then follow us on your favorite podcast app today. Today, we're going to discuss how to build an audience in 2026. I went back and reviewed the How to Build an Audience in 2025 episode, and I'm going to review the important points from that episode here, but I'm not going to redo a 25-minute episode. So anybody who's really interested in how to build an audience this year, you should go back, do your homework, and listen to the 2025 episode, because most of the things that happened to Gmail and Yahoo, the things that caused all that trouble a year or so ago, those are still valid. So you have to understand those things. We're going to build on that by talking about how to model out where your list is going to be in Q4 2026 and kind of the tools you might use in Klaviyo to measure your progress to make sure that as you're following the rules we detailed in the 2025 episode, you are steering the ship correctly. So first, what from episode 15, How to Build an Audience in 2025 is still true. It is still true that 10 times more of your repeat buyers every month are receiving email than are not. It's just the birds and the bees. When people stop receiving emails, they stop purchasing. And this, I've researched this to death. I've measured this and tested this to death on accounts. It's just true. Of course, the number varies on the 10 times. It's higher and lower, but that's basically what's happening. So when someone leaves your list, like what's happening? Either they opt out or they tune out. And tune out is they stop engaging. If you have proper engagement windows that remove Apple privacy opens, I'll repeat very quickly for members of the audience who've just joined, you can always go back and listen to the first few episodes and also the what is a click, what is an open episode, where I explain this in depth, but very quickly, Apple privacy opens are not real opens. Apple has cached the pixel because someone has said, I want you to protect my identity. They've said that in their iPhone. Apple caches the pixel, and every time you send an email to that address, the cached pixel fires, and it just shows the email's opened. No one can geolocate you, all this privacy stuff, okay? So those aren't real opens. And if you keep sending to those, eventually you end up in the spam folder. We remove people who've only done Apple privacy opens. If they don't have any other kind of engagement, we remove them from our segments, and you should too. Here it is. Net, you're going to benefit more than lose if you remove those from addresses from your segments. You're going to go, oh my God, my segments dropped by 25,000 people. Yeah, but the people that dropped, they have not engaged. They would have had a true open, a non-Apple privacy open, or a click or something like that. They'd still be in your segmentation. You're losing people who have not engaged. So if someone opts out or tunes out and you're properly removing Apple privacy opens, and they're no longer getting your emails, they're not going to buy again. This is still true. It's still true that in campaigns, if someone hasn't opened in, it varies. If you've got poor deliverability after 90 days, I suppose it could go up to 180, but we don't see a lot of that. But essentially 3-4 months, right? 5 on the high end after most recent open, Gmail and Yahoo are just going to start dumping stuff in spam. They want to see engagement. And we know this because we set up segments that look at people who have opened in a certain window, people who have not opened in a certain window, but open in a window later. We've measured this and we see there's this point where suddenly open rate just tanks because the stuff's being sent to spam. So it is still true. Campaigns, you cannot message someone from a year ago with campaigns if they haven't engaged. You can make a segment that says open in the last 365, but not all those people are getting those emails. It's still true. Okay? And that means it's still true you can't lean on campaigns to do reactivation and build an audience. It is still true that you need opens and clicks for Gmail to want to message somebody. So it is still true that you must build a 12-month reactivation campaign that messages people on a rather scheduled basis with highly engaging evergreen content. You send it through your campaign window and then you schedule it so that it goes automatically to people who fall out of the campaign window in future. And you message them content that makes them feel you're helping them be the better person they want to be, whether it's a better rock climber or a better chef or whatever. Every program must have content that people look forward to. If you want to build an audience, you must produce content where you build a conditioned behavior for someone to open your messages because they know that there is value in there for them. And then when they see a message from you, they're like, oh, this is probably good. And they're just conditioned to click on your messages. You're trying to build conditioning. So you must have a portion of your content. I was talking recently with another professional who said 1/4 of our content. Hey, it's nice to set a target for that, but some portion of your content must be purely to engage your customers, even though those messages might not perform as well, because what they do is they increase the performance of your other messages by increasing the engagement of your other messages by conditioning users to open your messages. So that is all still true. Okay, that was a quick 7-minute summary. Go back and listen to the full episode. Okay? Also, please go listen to episode 69, where we talk about email metrics. There's a video you can watch for that episode, and we go through 12 tiles, an awesome 12-tile dashboard, 2 different dashboards for Klaviyo, and it'll just give you just the right stuff you need to be looking at to monitor your business in Klaviyo, and also ways to think about the metrics. Very important episode. I just dropped it a few episodes ago. So you want to go in and star your segments that have proper campaign windows, like has done something in the last 60 or 120 days or whatever, and have removed Apple Privacy Opens so we know those windows are real. And in that tile, the list growth tile, you see what your current list size is. And for all of your segments all in one. Don't include any segments that don't have proper windows, because then stuff just adds up forever because no one ever falls out of the window. You need a proper window, and you need to remove the Apple Privacy Opens. You star the segment, and then on this tile, you select starred segments. And you will see your whole list size for all of your segments that you use together. This is your entire audience. And you will see the current and past size of it. And you can see, is my list growing? So, okay, first of all, that from episode 69, that is going to be your source of truth for if your audience is growing. Okay? And from episode 15, there's a big talk on the kind of content you need to produce to send to that audience, and a bunch of the birds and the bees of inboxing, and a bunch of the birds and the bees of engagement. Now, what I want to talk about right now that we're warmed up, now that we're caught up with previous episodes, is what you should do right now in a spreadsheet to figure out what's going on and what's going to happen. And I see this all the time. We used to be doing this in Meta or whatever, and now we're not. This happens all the time. We were doing all this stuff in Meta, and our list was growing. And then, we stopped doing all this stuff in Meta because we're, pivoting or advertising less or something. And then to offset that, because we're driving less traffic from Meta, driving less revenue from net new addresses, we ramped up what we're doing in email to make up for that loss in revenue. And then suddenly our list is falling off a cliff. Well, 2 things happened. 1, you're driving less traffic, so you're getting less signups. And 2, you're sending more emails, and your loss from unsubscribes is your list size times your deployments times your unsubscribe rate. So if your unsubscribe rate is 1%, and you send 100 emails a year, you burn through your entire list every year. And you must replenish that list annually from subscribes. You see it all the time. Think about how common this would be. The reaction is we're doing less in advertising, so we start doing more in email. Doing less in advertising, list shrinks. Doing more in email, list shrinks, right? And there is a value to a growing list. There's a financial value to a growing list. This is what we discussed in the recent episode I did with Eric on the DTC podcast. I recommend you go back and look at that episode where we talk about growing an audience and then also what to do as you pivot to a content focused in email. You pivot to a conversion focus on your website to balance these two things and have them both have separate strategies and make them greater than some of their parts. So go back and look at that episode with Eric where we talk about that stuff, please. So now that we know an example of what can go wrong, what would have avoided that? Well, if someone just sat down once or twice a year and did what I'm going to discuss and just model it out a bit, they're going to have an informed process for growing an audience. First, your email revenue is your list size times your deployments times your revenue per email sent. So if you want to know how much revenue you're going to make this year, you take your list size, you multiply it by your revenue per email sent, and the number of deployments you're going to do. And this is highly predictable. I did this one year on the brand side, and it was a huge brand that eventually sold to Amazon that I worked at. I was off by $50,000 at the end of the year. It was crazy. I'm like, wow, that was accurate. So this is incredibly accurate. But what can change that? What's that? Okay, list size times revenue per email sent times deployments is revenue. What can change that? Well, if your list size changes, that's going to change that calculus, right? Also, if your revenue per email sent changes, that changes the calculus, right? So when you start sending more emails, the revenue per email sent actually goes down a bit. If you start sending 5 times more emails, you're not going to interact with all 5 the same way. As you send less emails, often the revenue per email sent goes up, but you're sending less emails, so you actually end up making less revenue in the end. Okay, we discussed that in a previous episode. Well, the same thing is true for your unsubscribe rate. Okay, your list size, your average send size, let's not say list size, let's say average send size. And how are we going to calculate average send size? It's your sent times your deployments. You can look at a quarter, whatever, go back to the last quarter. Okay, what's number of emails sent, number of campaigns we sent, that's your average send size. Okay, so your average send size times your unsubscribe rate times the number of emails you're going to send over a period of time is how many unsubscribes you're going to drive. Again, if you have an unsubscribe rate of 1% and you send 100 emails, 100 campaigns a year, you're going to burn through 100% of your list. You're going to have nothing left. Everything has to be refilled. Cut that down to 0.5%, the numbers totally change. So we step into, Einstein said the 8th wonder of the world is compound interest. So this is compounding. Getting your unsubscribe rate from 0.75 to 0.5 has an enormous effect on your list size. So if you take anything from this episode, you better look at your unsubscribe rate. Okay, so the first thing we're going to calculate, we're going to grow an audience, right? Because we want a large list size. What does that large list size give us? Your list size times your revenue per email sent times the number of emails you're going to send is your revenue. So you want that list size growing. Okay, so the first thing we got to calculate is, okay, how much are we losing from that list? Your average send size times the number of messages you're going to deploy times your unsubscribe rate is how much you're going to lose, right? Okay, we know what we're going to burn. You then also want to know what you're going to add, okay? So that would be your traffic times your opt-in rate plus, and this is what I'm giving right now, these are estimates. This is for you to estimate your year ahead. So there's obviously some crossover here. This is a little bit gray, but you want your traffic times your list subscribe times your non-subscribing buyer rate. And what's your non-subscribing buyer rate? Well, you can actually just go into Klaviyo and you can measure buyers over a period of time that have not given you permission, right? So you've got your traffic times your subscribe rate for subscribe, but then also you get people on your list, you get implied consent from people who purchase and don't subscribe, of course. So you need to calculate that as well, right? Traffic times your subscribe rate and also traffic times your non-subscribing buyer rate. Basically going to get what you add in, okay? So every buyer that's purchasing is obviously going in, and every person who subscribes and doesn't purchase is still going in, and you get them to purchase later, right? So those are the two groups. We're going to say, okay, well, how much are we going to get? So we just calculated how much are we going to lose, how much are we going to get? And that's for like definitive add, right? And definitive burn, unsubscribe, right? But also we talked about tune out and tune in, right? So people can tune out. How are we going to measure people tuning out? Well, someone tunes back in when they open. When they open, they're back in. Okay? For the full length. They're back in if it's like open in the last 120 days. They open, they're back in for 120 days, right? So it would be sent times the open rate divided by 2. Why divided by 2? Because we're assuming half of the opens are Apple Privacy opens. If you have good segmentation, half of your opens will be Apple Privacy opens. Look, because even if you remove Apple Privacy opens, it doesn't mean that you don't actually collect any Apple Privacy opens. Because if someone has Apple Privacy on and they click and they're still in segmentation because they clicked, but they have Apple Privacy opens on, you're still going to collect Apple Privacy opens for the entire time they're in your segmentation because they clicked. So you still have to adjust your numbers for Apple Privacy opens. So let's just say if you have good segmentation where the windows aren't huge and you pull out the bot clicks and you pull out the Apple Privacy opens, we're just going to assume half those opens are Apple Privacy because that's essentially what we see in practice. So if we take our emails sent times our open rate divided by 2, that's going to be how many people are going to tune in. That's your re-up. And that's a critical number. So, and the important, if you're going to take anything else from this, 20 minutes into this podcast, is that you must send emails to be able to send emails, right? And we do a lot of, 9 campaign creatives per month kind of numbers. If you're doing like 4 or 5 campaign creatives a month and sending them out, you're not going to generate enough opens to keep that list active. You need to send more content to generate enough opens. Now, look, you send 5 emails a week. Look, people aren't opening all 5 of those emails. You reach a point, obviously, of diminishing returns, but you need to send enough emails to generate enough opens to keep people tuned in. So there we just measured how many tune-ins, how many re-ups we're going to get, right? To offset that, we have to measure how many people are going to tune out. That would be your list, your average send size, right? Your list size divided by your engagement window. So let's say it's a 120-day window, right? Well, that means you burn through that list in 120 days. 1/120th of that list tunes out every day if they don't re-up. We just calculated how many you're going to re-up. It's your email sent times your open rate divided by 2. Well, you're also burning through the list divided by the engagement window. That's how many people tune out. So now we have 4 things here in groups of 2. We have how many people you're adding, a hard add because they bought or they subscribed, and how many people you're losing, a hard loss because they unsubscribed. Quick comment, you must also remove spam complaints from your segmentation because Gmail does not port spam complaints to Klaviyo. So please remove spam complaints from your segmentation. And then the second set, how many people tune in or re-up from opens and how many people tune out from just falling off the list. When you put these 4 things together in these groups of 2, you are going to get a good idea of what's going to happen with your list. Is it going to grow or is it going to shrink? Right? And anytime you make a major change, like I said, hey, we cut our advertising in half or we doubled our advertising, you should just gather a month or so of data and do this. Like this is just something that you have a spreadsheet for it and it's all ready and you just poke in some new numbers and that's going to tell you, it's going to get you, and then you can actually just model it out for the next 12 months or whatever and get an idea of where your list is going to go. Now, some of you are going to do what I just described and you're going to go, whoa, that's not what I thought was going to happen, right? That may make you change some things. Like, for instance, you may change your deployment frequency because you are burning too much of your list. And keep in mind that when you send more, you burn your list, but you also generate less re-ups. Now, once someone's burned, they can never re-up again, right? So, every time someone hard unsubscribes, that person never gets to re-up again, right? So you must keep that in mind. Unsubscribes are worse than tune-outs because you can never get them back. And you have to use that in your calculus when you look at this. And you're all very smart, intelligent people. So if you calculate these 4 things and put your mind to it, you're going to figure out what's right for you, right? This absolutely will lead you in the right direction. Now, you may look at this and say, I got to send one less campaign a month or one less campaign a week or whatever it is, because I can see that I'm going to fall off a cliff. If your list is shrinking, that means your revenue per email sent must go up just to maintain the same revenue. How are you going to get your revenue per email sent up? Hey, 20% off. And then your whole business starts to careen, right? You start having problems because you're discounting to make up for the lost revenue. So very, very bad. You want to have a nice, steady, every month, hey, the list is up 1%. The list is up 1.5. You want that. I mean, of course, if it's up 5-10 because you're in explosive growth, awesome. Although, look, if the list is growing too much, it's like, well, hey, why don't we push it a little harder and monetize those addresses, right? But the point is, you want to just make sure the list is growing a bit every month because you're getting a dividend from that. As your list grows, you get your list size times your revenue per email sent every time you send a message. So if you've got a little bit of growth in there, you are building growth into your future. So you're going to calculate these 4 things and go, whoa, okay. You might actually say, dude, our list is growing way too fast. We need to send more emails. And that would be a great way to deal with this. Now, keep in mind, when you send more emails, your unsubscribe rate goes up, your revenue per email sent goes down. When you send less emails, your unsubscribe rate goes down, your revenue per email sent goes up. So when you make these changes, you are going to have to run this again. So you change it and then you wait a couple months and you just check in again. You make a little thing. This is not crazy stuff, guys. You're going to go re-listen to 2 episodes and make a little spreadsheet with 10 variables, right? This is not big stuff. And you're going to run this and then you're going to make some changes and then you're going to go back in 2 months, plug in the variables and figure out what's changed. Okay? This is normal email marketer stuff. It's normal stuff that nobody does. But if you do it, you're going to build in that little bit of growth. You're going to build an audience in 2026, and you are going to slay Q4 2026. It's going to be just making it rain, right? So listen, entrepreneurs, executive spammers, and webmasters, I hope you've enjoyed the episode and have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.